Hi, it's Julie Westmaas. I'm going to be doing a presentation of the jelly plate printing. Hopefully, we'll get a good image on the jelly plate today with the laser print transfer. I'm in my office right now at the computer, and I'm going to be printing a laser print for the jelly plate. And then we'll pause the video and go downstairs and get started. Let's see here. Okay. All right, so I have the image up here on my computer. This is the image, it's an old photograph of my mother that I edited for the jelly plate. You need a good, crisp, black and white contrast image. And if you want to know more about how to do that, I have a website posted on the Zoom that you can go and learn how to do that. It's all about the jelly plate transfer from a laser print. So that was a really good, and there's also a video, so it has written steps and it has a video. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and what I like to do is go to the file where it is. Okay. There she is. And then that's highlighted. The reason I do it from here is it's a better interface for printing. So I'm going to go up to print. And then it's got my laser print up here, that it's going to print from. And I've got full page photo. And I'm not going to do the fit. I'm just going to do the whole thing. And I'm going to print it from my laser printer. Okay. So I'm going to do this 3 times so that there's lots of toner on it. So I'm going to go back in, hit print, and you can see how it shows that the picture is with her head up. Sometimes when you're doing a landscape photo, you have to just follow what's on here. And this is for my printer. Other printers might be different. I'm just going to stick it back in, right like that. Get it exactly the way it was on there as best I can. And print it. Sometimes it comes out a little double, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay, second print. And once again, print. Now, there should be enough toner on there to make a good, solid transfer. However, sometimes it just doesn't work. And so today I already have one that I pulled last night that's on the plate, and I'm going to go from there, and then we're going to pause the video and work on doing this one. Okay, so welcome to my happy place. This is my studio, and this is the little corner where I do my painting or printing or things with anything messy. As you can see, Marie's going to turn the camera over here. this is my sewing area. It's a little messy right now, but I've got my long arm and my machine over here. So I have a separate, I'm very fortunate to have separate areas where I can do different things. But anyway, so I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to put a little apron here, even though this shirt doesn't probably matter if I get paint on it because it's so wild and crazy. Okay. All right. So a little bit I explained when I was upstairs about this here. I pulled this picture. I don't have a picture of it, but you can see that it's a tree and some grasses. This one pulled pretty well. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the background for this. And then we'll pull it on some fabric. And I'm going to pause the video for a second. So a little bit about the brayers. I've got 3 different brayers here. They're really nothing special. You can get brayers on Amazon. I don't even remember where I got these, but I think one of them was a workshop that I did with somebody. And then, you know, I keep my stencils here, whatever textures. We're going to be using these plants. They're fake plants, but we're going to be using them on this one later. And then I have a stack of paper that I use to clean my brayer off. You know, if I get too much excess paint or in between prints, I clean my brayer off and I hang it up here because I don't want it sitting on the paper because it will stick. And then you'll have paper stuck to your brayer. So make sure you've got somewhere to put your brayer, that, you know, a piece of plastic, or just hang it up. That is important because you don't want a brayer with a bunch of paper on it because it'll make a texture, which could be interesting. But anyway, so this one here, I'm going to use some for the background. For the background, I'm going to use some gray. Hopefully this paint. Now, the background paint, you know, can vary. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's new or old, really. Anyway, so I'm going to use some gray at the top. And that's probably enough right there. And then I'm going to do some blue, you know, for the water, because this was at the lake. So I'm going to a little bit of blue down here. You'll learn that you don't need a lot of paint. So I'm going to grab my brayer, and I'm just going to use some. There's a water line there, so I'm going to kind of try to emulate a water line with this blue background. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, there's still some blue on this. I might even bring this down over the blue. You know, there's so many variables to doing jelly prints. And that's probably good there. I'm going to wipe my brayer off, hang it up, take my, I don't want this to dry because I want this paint to come out on my plate. So I'm going to rub, make sure all the surfaces are being, you know, contacted. This is fabric. I decided since this one pulled for the transfer well, I was going to do it on fabric. Sometimes I do it on paper, depending on what I'm going to use it for. But I can make a little art quilt out of this. And just, now, there's a little bubble there. It might come out. Sometimes I lay a little book on it. There. Now we'll let that dry. And Marie can pause the video. So while this is drying, a little bit about the jelly press. This one here is a company, and it just says Gel Press. There's different companies that make these, and you can go on Amazon or Blick Art Supplies. There's probably other websites that have these available. I don't have much luck finding them in stores. And this one is a large one. I don't use the large one a lot, but it comes like this. And the way you store it, you know, originally you're going to take this off, because I haven't even used this yet. Okay, so also when you store it, you know, you close it up, and I store it on its side, and I'm just going to walk over here and show you where I put them. All three of them I stack right here. I was taught to store them on their side like this. For some reason, I don't know why. I didn't ask. I just did it like I was told. All right, so I'm going to uncover this a minute. Still a little cool to the touch, but let's check it out and check it and see. Whoops, I'm going to set these over here. I have another jelly plate here that we're going to do something else with. That looks pretty good when it's a little cool, though. If it's real cool to the touch and it still feels a little bit, you know, cool like it could be, you'll know when you do it and you feel it. But this feels pretty good. The other thing I have here is a little fan I use, you know, if things are drying and I can walk away, I can turn it on and it will blow on my project. All right, so I am going to pull this. I'm going to start slow just to make sure. Some people actually pull the plate off, but I'm going to do it this way. And I'm going slow. You can see some didn't pick up here, but you know what? The print is coming off pretty well, so I'm just going to keep going. It's good enough for me right at this point. Now, what you can do as well is if you feel like the tree isn't solid enough, you could go in and do a little painting on there. You can, you know, fill it in a little bit if you'd like. I kind of like it like this. It gives it kind of an airy feeling. Even the grasses came out kind of neat. And you can go in and stitch, you know, to add to something like this. So I'm excited about doing this one. It's kind of subdued and tranquil. All right, I'm going to put that right up here. And oh, I was going to say, I have a ton of prints in a stack. And I came across this one yesterday, and I thought, oh boy, this one really isn't what I want it to be. So you can take something that you don't like or doesn't have enough and add to it. You know, sometimes I do 2, 3, 4 layers before I like something, and it may look completely different. So I just wanted to put that in there. Don't be afraid to go back and change whatever you've got if you don't like it. So, okay, I'm going to show you a couple of ones that are finished. This is actually one that I did of the same one we're going to try today. And it's very similar to what we just did with the tree. here's another one that is my mother and her sister. Very old photo, but they had Hawaiian guitars as children, and they were young teens. And this one, after I pulled the picture, I went in and painted more detail with a brush on the background. It's a speaker and like the clothing and their faces and the architecture here, the window. Okay, and then this one here is of a tree on Mackinac Island, actually. And the funny thing is, the way it pulled, it looks like there's a moon up in the, I didn't plan that. It was just the way the paint came on from the tube. But I painted kind of a sunset in back of it with the brayer. This is just with the brayer. So those are 3 examples of what you could do. Okay, one thing I want to mention too is when you brayer off your excess paint on your paper, sometimes I like to use like paper that I've used to clean up my plate. Like this one I just did to clean this plate. It's white, but it has some interesting textures. So when I brayer on here, clean off my brayer, it makes more interesting textures on actually this scrap paper. And I keep these, and then sometimes I'll cut them up in little pieces and use them in collages or whatnot. So just an idea, some fun ideas. You can use your, reuse. We're all about reuse and recycle. So that's that. So I'm going to use this one to clean my brayer off because it'll be black. And so we're going to start the transfer. I printed 2, 3 times. This one turned out a little bit better. So we're going to use this one first. If this one doesn't pull, then we'll go ahead and pause the video and try it again. Always be prepared. It's a process that, like I said, it's a process where you have to kind of keep going, have patience, and a willingness to try again. I've spent many hours down here trying to get this to pull, and pretty much got it down, but sometimes it still doesn't work. So anyway, I'm going to use this laser print, and I'm going to use my new paint. Keep your fingers crossed. So I'm going to use very little. I'm just going to make some dabs, small dabs. That's probably enough right there. If you get too much, you can keep rolling it on your paper, but I kind of start by spreading it, with short strokes around the plate to get it distributed. And then I start rolling with a little bit more pressure on the plate. Kind of spreading it around a little bit. And then kind of even strokes. Now, it would kind of look like, I think it looks a little like texture of sandpaper when it's ready. And this is pretty good. See how when you use this is pretty good. I don't want to start taking it off too much. You know what? I got a little bit off too much. So I'm going to put a little bit more on there. No, I probably got too much. But that's okay. Now I got too much, so that's all right. All right, let's check it here. All right, I'm gonna go. Now we gotta do this right away. Don't want it to dry. Center it the best you can. I'm just gonna gently rub. It doesn't take long. Make sure all contacts. I think it's best to do it with the hands because then you can feel it rather than using a brayer. But if you're more comfortable with a brayer, that's good. Okay, too. I'm going to pull. Looks pretty good so far. It doesn't take long. There's her mouth, her eyes. Yeah, that's a pretty good pull. And this is what it looks like after you pull it. So you can, let that dry and use it for cleaning off your brayer. So, I pulled the print. You want to let it dry up to 5 minutes. And I put my fan on. I turned it off because it's too noisy for the video. But so it's dry to the touch. Okay, I can go through and so this print is actually going to be the foreground, and you can kind of pull the plate up and see that this is going to be on the foreground of the print. So now I'm going to add some colors for the background. I've chosen some white, magenta, and some yellow. So I'm going to dot some yellow for her dress around, and a little bit of magenta. Oop. And let's add some white to lighten it up. You don't want anything too dark. You don't want to cover up your black print. So I'm just going to start rolling. Now if you get a little magenta down at the bottom, that's okay. I'm going to actually do that intentionally. Okay, so I got all my paint on there, brayered on the way I want, and I'm just going to make sure it doesn't dry too much. If it does, okay, the paint is all on there. The fabric that I'm printing on is there. I let it dry for several minutes on our break, and so I'm going to remove the books. And it feels pretty good. So I'm going to start pulling. Now you can see there's a little, but it doesn't always pull perfectly, but it is coming off on the fabric. So I'm going to call that good. As long, oh, there's a little spot there, which is fine. And, what's left on the plate, you can actually leave on the plate for your, next print if you want to use it for something. All right. Now, it's a little bit darker than I'd like, but you can get the idea. of how this works. So the print is in the background, and I'm sorry, the laser print is in the foreground, which is on the plate first, and then the background is in the back. Actually, it looks like a sunset in the back of her. Okay. Okay, so we've done the photo transfer. I've actually done two of them. And I think I have a little bit of time left to do a monoprint. And I'm going to use some plastic ferns that I took off my fern plant. And then also, I just want to mention too that you can use all kinds of things for texture. This is some plastic that I taped together for some circles. You can use all kinds of stencils. I've got all kinds of textures of stencils here that I use. Anything like a comb. You could run a comb through the paint. Just some fun things you could, around the house, you can find things that you can use for textures. But today I'm going to use these ferns, and I'm going to do, this is like a mono print, but I'm going to use it with the print of the fern, and then take off the excess with some paper, and then pull the fern, and then let it dry, and then do a background, and then put my fabric down to pull the final print, if that all makes sense. So I'm going to start out with some darker colors for this. And some green and blue. I'm just going to randomly put some on here. You know, if you get too much, it's not, you know, don't worry about it, because you can always, if you feel like you got too much on there when you start brayering it, you can always take it off. And I've got some interesting stuff over here on my excess paper. So I'm just going to start pulling this on. This kind of process isn't as touchy as the transfer. You got to do a couple of these because, you know, when you're doing the photo transfer, when you first start doing it, it can be a little discouraging, but don't get discouraged, because it's worth the wait. And this is going to be a little bit, oh, that's a pretty color. I'm going to keep a little bit more paint on this than I did for the transfer. It's a little bit more. Set this baby down over here. And this one this way. Does that look good, Marie? Marie's doing my video today. And then I'm just going to place this paper over. I like this part because it's just so tactile. You know, feel the... So I'm just removing some of that paint and pressing that texture down. Again, you know, you could use a brand. It's a lot easier with real plants, but this time of year, you can't. There we go. You know, it's messy too. Real plants are a little flatter. They work a little bit better.
What kind of paper is that?
This is parchment paper. You can use any paper, really. This one just had kind of an interesting ghost print on it to begin with, so. And you can, you know, you can use this paper too.
Could you use fabric to do that part?
You could, if you, yeah, absolutely. If you knew what, you know, you can kind of see what it's going to look like. So it's pulling out in kind of an interesting texture. All right. And this is an interesting paper. So you can use that for something. So I'm going to pull my ferns. And Marie's going to pause the video while this dries. You can already see it. It's going to look pretty, pretty, pretty. So we used the parchment paper, and it was kind of a happy surprise, happy accident, whatever you want to call it. But the parchment paper actually didn't absorb all the paint, but it did like make like a texture crinkle. And so it created some interesting textures. This is what's so fun about jelly print, because sometimes you have these happy accidents that happen along the way. Some are great, some aren't so great, but this one I really, really am excited about. So I'm going to put this up here, and I'll use this too, and maybe collage or something. But I'm going to use some lighter colors because the print that I used for the ferns is dark, so I want a light background so it'll show up. So this is the foreground. Okay, so we're painting the background. So I'm going to put white in this luscious spring green. I'm going to start a little bit of white. And some spring green. And I love these little tubes of paint that you can get. I'm going to use my other brayer that you can get very inexpensively at Hobby Lobby, or yeah, I guess I'll use this. It'll be fine. And I'm going to try to not wipe my brayer off too much because I want this layer to be a little more juicy. Move that around a little bit. I'm just mixing that white in a little bit using the edge of my brayer. I don't want to do it too much because I don't want to disturb the image underneath too much. And it'll turn out fine. Now, I could go in with another texture, some bubble paper or something like that, or bubble wrap to make a texture underneath, but I'm not going to do that today. That's because I like that texture from the parchment paper. So it's kind of a, thing where you're going along and make some decisions along the way. But I'm going to use my fabric now. Oh, that one's not very big. Let's see here. All right, this fits. A little left over. Yeah, and you might want to iron your fabric too. I got a little crease in it there, but that should be okay. Now, we're going to let that dry. A little bubble, but don't pull it up because then you'll have a mess. Sometimes the book should help. I'm going to put another one on it. Okay, while that's drying, there's another one here that was of my mother that I did, and I forgot about it, and I was just looking at some of these. But I did the same thing I did with this. And then I went through and I put down a stencil on, with some metallic paint and did the same thing I did with the leaves. I took the paint off the plate, and then I printed over this. So I would do that. I could do that with this. I could print over this with like a ghost print or a stencil. Yeah, I mean, you could use anything you wanted. I could do different textures. I have lots of different, I could do, many different things here. So again, if you're not real happy, the other thing I could do is paint over her face, actually, with a paintbrush to make it lighten it up a little bit. So lots of ways you can do things. Just wanted to show you that. Losing my voice. Let's check this a second. That's still a little cool. We'll pause and come back. Okay, so we've made this, let this dry completely. I put some books on it. I took the books off, and it feels pretty good. I mean, when you start doing this, like I said, you'll be able to tell if it's dry or not. So I'm going to start pulling. Looks pretty good. And just kind of gently. Now, whether you do this with fabric or paper, you can experiment with different fabrics. I just use cotton. It's just a regular cotton, medium weight or lightweight. Looks like it's pulling pretty good. Ooh. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll see my crease came across. So you might, want to iron your fabric, but that's okay. It adds to the texture. Doesn't bother me. Now see, it didn't come through here on the corner. If you wanted to, you could put some gel if that bothered you, you could put some gel medium down and replace it and let it dry again. And it should pull, but I'm not going to do that right now. It doesn't bother me that much. Now see, you can see this metallic coming through. That was from a previous print. So it's coming off on this print, which I like. That's fine with me. And there you go. Pretty happy with that. Yeah. All right. I hope that I've inspired you to try this great technique. There's many techniques in jelly printing. Probably way more than I've shown you. Excuse me. Bree's going to go down in my business card. So if you have any questions, you could... Excuse me. If you have any questions, you can email me or contact me on Facebook Messenger.